Hasbro? You okay, buddy? You all right? I don't know. Well, we'll worry about Hasbro in just a minute. But before we get into that, of course, if you haven't already, I'd like to ask you to please click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications about all of our upcoming videos here on the channel, whether it's news about an ill friend or classic tabletop RPG news, our live plays, all that sort of thing. It really helps with the algorithm. And so with all that said, the call to action, let's get right into it. Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm not a finance guy. You guys know that. I know that. And if this didn't really directly have to do with something, at least I think, that came up in tabletop gaming circles, I probably wouldn't have touched on a Hasbro financial matter all that much, at least not for a newsy video. But with that said, let's jump into this and take a look at this news article that dropped recently from Polygon. And it seems that Hasbro has been sued by investors for allegedly lying about overpurchased inventory after pandemic demand. Hasbro allegedly, quote, misrepresented and concealed the extent of its inventory buildup. This, of course, is from Nicole Carpenter, and as always, I will share the link down below. And trust me, this goes a little bit beyond just Hasbro financials and so on. So let's take a look at the article here. A self-described, quote, investor rights law firm, end quote, filed a lawsuit Saturday alleging that Hasbro, the tabletop gaming and toy company, misrepresented its excessive inventory to investors, something the firm says is a violation of federal security laws. Polygon reached out to Hasbro for comment and has yet to hear back. Bernstein, Litowitz, Berger, and Grossman, the law firm, filed a complaint in a New York court on behalf of the West Palm Beach Firefighters Pension Fund, asking the court to grant the case class action status, meaning other investors and stock purchasers can participate. Hasbro, like other gaming companies, saw a boost in interest and sales during the pandemic when people were looking for things to do in their homes. Games were an obvious choice. The lawsuit alleges Hasbro purchased inventory to meet that demand, but ended up buying too much. Put a pin in that, folks. We're going to come back to that in just a hot minute. Hasbro allegedly told investors the high purchasing was necessary to mitigate supply chain risk and meet consumer demand ahead of the 2022 holiday season, according to the lawsuit. When that inventory sat, Hasbro said the stock reflected outstanding and anticipated demand and not a decreased demand. The lawsuit alleges that Hasbro was intentionally misleading investors and knew it overpurchased inventory to an extent, I think that probably meant to an extent that significantly outpaced customer demand. The timeline makes sense. 2022 is when the world started opening up more broadly and people were eager to get out of their homes. Hasbro announced in 2023 in a preview of its 2022 financial report that revenue was down due to poor sales in the toy market. To mitigate that loss, it laid off 15% of its staff, around 1,000 people. And of course, we know that they have laid off another 100 employees, and there's been not a little bit of C-suite turnover lately. Despite that, Hasbro allegedly continues to tell investors it didn't have an inventory problem. In October 2023, an investor asked about Hasbro stock, to which Hasbro Chief Operating Officer Gina Getter said Hasbro was spending $50 million to move and market inventory and as an obsolescent cost, which is corporate speak for outdated, devalued inventory. Because of all of this, especially the October 2023 financial disclosures, stock prices declined and investors lost money. The lawsuit alleges to the tune of $831 million in shareholder value. The stock value Hasbro previously had, according to the lawsuit's claim, was due to inflated prices due to the lack of disclosures. The lawsuit states that Hasbro stock is owned by hundreds or thousands of investors who would be impacted. The law firm is asking the court for damages due to the alleged violation of the Exchange and Securities Act, which requires publicly traded companies to be honest and transparent to shareholders. I would say Hasbro's been pretty darn transparent. In its most recent earnings report filed on October 24th, Hasbro reported a 15% decline in revenue. Its inventory, according to the report, was down 39% over the last year's third quarter. Hasbro experts, I think that's probably supposed to be expects the company to be down 14% overall in 2024. And you can see, here's some legal details from Market Watch. This is a lot of legalese. I'm going to link to this article. I'm not going to do a line by read through here. But it's, I think something relevant, and maybe you're out there watching and you actually hold Hasbro stock, but they do mention if you suffered a loss in Hasbro Inc. stock during the relevant time frame, even if you still hold your shares, and it says go to this link to learn about your rights to seek a recovery. There's no cost or obligation to participate. And this is Levi and Korzinski, Korzinski LLP. So yeah, this is a little bit of a sticky situation. Now, remember when I said stick a pin in regarding the purchase of their stock? So we talked about this a little bit last year, right around Christmas time. People were going gaga because guess what? They were finding deeply discounted Dungeons and Dragons materials. Now, this is from the Twitter page for or Twitter account rather for Ollie's, which is a deep discount clearinghouse kind of store. Don't go there looking for this stuff. I don't think it's there anymore. But you can see there's a ton of Dungeons and Dragons material that wherever this exemplar store is, there's pallets of this stuff sitting there. And this is from, what is the date on this? December 7th of 2023. So this is literally less than a year ago. Ollie's was blowing this stuff out. And I know a lot of people, even old school gamers, were snatching these sets up because it's cheap, free. It's not free. It's cheap, low-cost, pre-painted miniatures and dungeon tiles and dice and other gewgaws. Even if you have no intention of buying any of these games, there it was. Emphasis on was, again, I'm not saying to go look for this stuff. Don't come back and say, hey, Dungeon Delver, I went to an Ollie's. They didn't have any D&D stuff. I'm blaming it on you. This is old news, but it's still impacting stuff today. And so where that finds us is Hasbro has got this lawsuit on their hand over things just like this. Dungeons and Dragons game products they over-purchased for the pandemic. I mean, 2022, like the article said, rolled around and things started opening up. And I would wager that just like the original moral panic around Dungeons and Dragons generated so much looking interest, and over the years you've seen D&D books that people brought home to see what the big hullabaloo was about, cracked open, maybe played once, and then threw in a box in the attic. This is kind of the same thing. This is, people locked up in their houses, particularly in larger cities, for months, a couple of years, depending on the city and the job and the severity of the human malware that was going around. And when they could finally go outside and touch grass again, sitting inside and continuing to play board games, card games, of painting miniatures of whatever stripe was just no longer on the radar. And even if it was, they were now going back to the comic store, to the library, to the clubhouse, to the geek pub, wherever, to actually sit down and meet their friends face to face to play a little bit of D&D, and not buying $50, $60, $75 game sets off of Amazon. And so Hasbro was stuck with this stuff, and they had to shift it quick. So you wound up with everything being dumped in stores like Ollie's. So it looks like that is finally washing back up on Hasbro's shore, but they may not have been forthright with their investors about how much of that stuff that they had bought. So I guess the question is, and cases like this can take years to resolve. I mean, I can't tell you guys how many little class action lawsuits I've gotten letters and emails from just because I bought a particular brand of phone, owned a particular type of car, had some online service or something like that, only to click, yes, I want to participate, and then find out 2 or 3 years later, here's your $15 check, or it was settled and after fees, there's no recompense to the consumer. Thanks, have a nice day. So this is not something we're going to hear about, even if it goes forward. I mean, depending on the judge, a judge might look at this and say, I don't find any merit with this. I think Hasbro is completely in the right, and dismiss it. And then there's appeals. And even if it goes against Hasbro after years of wrangling, there could be appeals. So it could be, it could be 2034 before we hear about anything further about this. But it is interesting that things are kind of starting to turn, and it makes you wonder about the too big to fail status of Hasbro. They are the Microsoft, they are the Apple computer of toys, but if they're hold at the waterline by something like this, if the case does go against them, and you do see more people pouncing on them for things like this, what will that hold for the future of Hasbro? Again, I'm no financial prognosticator. I've never pretended to be, but I'd like to know what you think about it. So if you've got some thoughts on this, whether you want, you think Hasbro is completely innocent, or you want to cheer on their eventual demise, or maybe you're part of this lawsuit or you want to get involved in this, leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. A financially strapped Hasbro trying to find places to unload things may start looking at underperforming brands. And as we've mentioned before, Dungeons and Dragons is not the most money-making thing for, not even for Hasbro, for Wizards of the Coast, it's not the most money-making thing. So, and a potential buyer could look at classic D&D and say, look, I don't want that baggage. I'll take D&D, but I'm just going to shut all that stuff down, leaving us out in the cold once again. Do you think that could happen? Again, I'd like to hear from you. But guys, until then, keep your eye on the discount stores, but both hands on your stock portfolio. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.